Hey there, I'm Pete Townsend, and this is Money Never Sleeps. We look inside the minds of entrepreneurs and at the crossover of startups, enterprise, finance, technology, and life as we know it. On the show this week, we've got a special segment from the first edition of the Techstars Web3 Convo series that I did with Tsing recently. As the Web3 space is moving at a lightning fast pace, we wanted the Web3 founder community to have the benefit of insights from some of the leading minds globally, even before the Launchpool Web3 Techstars Accelerator kicks off in Dublin in March of 2022. Michelle is based in the San Francisco Bay Area, and in addition to wearing many hats as a lawyer, artist, entrepreneur, startup advisor, and self-described futurist, she mentors founders through the Berkeley Blockchain Accelerator and Singularity University Ventures. So let's dive right into the chat with Michelle Tsing, all right here on Money Never Sleeps.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. My name is Hugh. I work at Techstars and I'm pleased to be a part of this fireside chat with Pete and Michelle Tsing. And without further ado, Pete, over to you.
Thank you so much, Hugh. Appreciate that. Thank you, Michelle, for joining and coming on board for this first in our Web3 Convo series. And this is all driven by the Launchpool Web3 Techstars Accelerator that's kicking off in Dublin in March of 2022. Which is a global mentorship-driven program for founders building blockchain technology and tokenization protocols towards a decentralized future of finance. To kick things off, we've got the perfect guest with Michelle Tsing. She wears many hats, as you might imagine. She's a lawyer, an artist, an entrepreneur, a startup advisor, and a self-described futurist. When she and I first spoke, we had a chat that ranged from Star Wars to Burning Man to crypto to DeFi to NFTs. So very unique and creative individual at that. She's also a mentor for the Berkeley Blockchain Accelerator and for Singularity University Ventures. She hosts Laptop Radio. Sincerely suggest you guys check that out, which is a weekly show and podcast on the Stanford University campus radio. She's previously a lawyer for PayPal. We're going to get into that a little bit, and also work with Apple, Samsung, Cisco, eBay. And lately, she's been spending a great deal of time on the governance of DAOs, or decentralized autonomous organizations, for those that aren't familiar with them. What we like to do with this series and why we're kicking it off is to get into this bit of a startup flywheel. We're starting with an MVP, or minimum viable product, and getting that product out there and building up a community base. Get yourself into a funding situation. You get that funding, you build out your product more, you build out your user community more, you get more funding, right? And it goes around and around. If you have trouble with any one of those in particular, you might fall off the wheel, right? So we're going to get this going around getting a product out there that is authentic, building up that community base, and looking at this in light of governance as well. And how do you do that the right way? So, Michelle, just to get us started, give us a view into your backstory and how you got to this point.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Pete, for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I'm at Money 2020 in Las Vegas right now, and I've just been learning about payments again, and talking about crypto, of course. So my background is I was a web developer in college at UC Berkeley for a database management company called Casal, and I was a technical writer and website developer at Cisco Systems. So I wrote a lot of the manuals for voice over IP, iOS, very nerdy stuff, working with engineers. And then I went straight to their legal department, basically working on, a lot of the transactions. So I started a internship program for them with mentorships and laptops and, in a really short amount of time. And then after that, I was at eBay, Samsung, Apple, and then a triple play telecom company. And then I went to PayPal, and I was at PayPal for 6 years, helping grow the large merchant services so that the total payment volume outgrew eBay. eBay was our number one customer, as you know, because PayPal was exclusive on it, and we became more mature. And after that, I resigned. I wanted to do something scary. I really walk into the unknown. So I decided to create, platforms. So, while I was doing startups, I was also volunteering for the MIT Stanford Venture Lab, and we had a virtual currency conference in 2013. In about 2014-15, I co-founded a digital wallet with, my co-founders, 4 people. 2 of them went to Blockchain University in Mountain View. So I knew about, and I helped with a provisional patent for that. So I knew about crypto and blockchain really, really early. So our deck is really some of the things that, visionary that you see today. And I then, for my nonprofit arm of me, I also help with Compute for Cancer, which is distributed computation, Robots Without Border, which is a digital, very advanced AI that helps with education, and also Loving AI. So if you go to lovingai.org, we created a software module that help Sophia to help humans become more loving and conscious. And one of these nonprofits wants to do an ICO in 2017 to raise money. So I went to the Berkeley conference where the SEC was there and a number of law firms. And so I asked them, could nonprofit raise money? The real one, right? Not the foundations that we see today. And so in about late 2017, I began speaking about blockchain. Someone invited me on Facebook. If you're smart and knows about blockchain, join. So I joined, right? I was just like, why is everyone talking about blockchain? Because back in the days, no one cared. Yep. So I joined, and someone organized a conference in Vegas, like near CES, right? It was actually the Coin Agenda conference, which I am going to this week as well. And I went there, mostly curious and just hang out with the people that I speak blockchain with. I noticed that there was a lot of men. So I did something that created a list of, I think 200 thought leaders, and they're all women. I thought that, there should be fintech women who should able to speak about payments, and cryptocurrency. And I actually went through every single one's resume and put a list on Medium and sent them to event organizers. And then I basically, got to really know the community, because remember, I came from a very proprietary background. And then, learning how to, open source my work and even write for the community, that was a little bit different for me, and I think throughout the course of doing AI, I learned to give back, as a person. And then so I'm a mentor at Berkeley Blockchain Accelerator, at Singularity Ventures, Hack Temple, which is, more of a community of entrepreneurs in San Francisco at a church. And then SD Academy, which is really bringing Turkish community connecting them with Silicon Valley. So I think and also Duke University called Graph, and each startup accelerator has their own, niche and different location as well. And I love that, right? And for me, I used to handle at PayPal, 100 transactions about a week, their own set of business people. So I'm kind of used to, working on different things at the same time.
I gotcha. That makes sense. That's a fascinating backstory. And like when you talk about PayPal being a totally proprietary experience, right? And that it was the work that you were doing as a lawyer was for PayPal, right?
Yes.
When you were there. And, there's, in parallel to my own experience that, being in one corporate organization for 10 years. And then when I was set free and realizing you could just share your voice with the world, right? Without someone looking over your shoulder. Right? That was extremely liberating. And I commonly, when I'm mentoring, I do refer back to my time as a corporate, and especially when it comes to how startups sell on a B2B basis, which is more relevant in fintech than it is in tokenized protocols, but in the crypto infrastructure, it's still incredibly relevant, especially with the on-ramps. But is there anything from your time with PayPal that has stayed with you to this day that you keep in mind when you're mentoring founders?
I think there's a lot of things, right? So I've seen the changes in the digital revolution, right? So there's widgets, there's digital goods, then it becomes POS. I think, and I also know the total payment value of different sectors, at PayPal. So it's kind of easy for me to advise, now I know I have a deep sense of the technology, in different verticals. And then also, I also know what works and what doesn't work, right? And then, I remember when I was doing my own startup, I created a boot camp for social media, and this is in 2013. I used to approve all the marketing, giveaways and all the marketing campaigns. Yeah. I know the price, of everything, right? Remember, I work on a number of transactions. So I know who charges what the deals are. I actually created a lot of the playbooks at PayPal. I work with InfoSec, the information security exhibit. I work with insurance, right? From licensing to procurement to distribution. and marketing. Basically, just supported like all those things.
Okay.
And it really helped because I have like a big picture of how to be successful. And beyond that is really the soft skill. Like you wanted to work with founders who could take feedback, right? And so when I did my bootcamp social media project for my team, besides all the content, like I got 10,000 followers on Twitter in a month. And I have no social media experience before that, but I love the web, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to work at a digital payments company for the longest time, and because of that I'm really passionate about it, and so there's just proprietary things that I train for the people in the team. And they were able to achieve that. And we had one-on-one every week, even just so that they know how to provide feedback and they know how to collaborate. And I thought that those soft skills are kind of important for a work environment.
Oh, big time. Yeah, that's so cool. I know I worked with a lawyer that years ago that come to mind when you tell that story about working as proprietary internal counsel for an organization where you need to have that insight and that depth of understanding into the different functions of the business in order to advise them. When you come out, you have all those reference points. But that social media, 10,000 followers in 1 month, I think there's a lot of people out there who would love to be able to replicate that and learn from you on that, Michelle.
Yeah, no, I was really lucky. I mean, it's kind of interesting because on Vine, I was making videos, when Vine first came out, and one of the person in the team was just like, oh, this is hot, and then they showed me a video on Vine, and I was just like, oh, I can make videos better than that, right?
Yeah.
And I did. I basically, when I travel, I make small video clips myself, and like just off different places, and then I was a professional photographer and videographer, right, just for fun. And because of that, Group Vine has millions of impressions, and we were featured by Vine almost every week, actually. Besides, like all the brands like Michelle Obama, Vans, NASA. I mean, it was awesome, and I just kept screenshotting every time they do it because I was just like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And then even on Apple, and I'm really grateful for this. I think I basically are in different communities, there's importance of traction and growth, right? And as an entrepreneur and as someone who works at these digital companies, you kind of know how important it is. And when you create an app, of course, you want to be featured by Apple, and you want, the world to know. And I was actually talking to a man at a conference, and he was saying that the cover of the app, you want eyes because people love eyes. And I met with him in San Francisco. And I think he wanted to charge me $150,000 for some kind of process to do that. And I guess he didn't take me seriously. So I've never seen him again after that. But I created apps on Apple, and it was featured by Apple, and it has millions of impressions and downloads. So I'm really grateful for things like that because, it kind of shows that like even people, who might look at you and say, hey, like she is a woman. She doesn't look like an entrepreneur. They don't take you seriously, but you kind of know what you're doing, and so you do it anyways and you try, and the universe makes it happen.
Absolutely.
So like never give up.
Absolutely. I hear you. I love that. Shifting gears a little bit, just thinking about some of the work that you're doing today, Michelle, that when we chatted the week before last, you said that you love governance, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about NFTs. We were talking about decentralized autonomous organizations. Looks like you're driving that now through the Governance Research Institute.
Mm-hmm.
How do you bring that passion for governance and for the space in general into how you work with founders as a mentor?
Sure. So, I love governance. I have talked about governance on my radio show a couple times, even before DAO became popular. And co-founding the Governance Research Institute was really awesome. I worked at a public company, and we comply with Sarbanes-Oxley, managing a board of directors, right? And being in the crypto space for a couple of years, you see a lot of fraud. I think people say that the blockchain is trustless. But we're not there yet because the smart contract is just not smart enough, right? And humans, the founders are humans too. So, during 2017, they paid themselves a lot of money. There's no governance, and now there's a lot of governance token, but, the functionality of governance is like not there. And I think governance includes a whole system, rules that govern your company, but it also has a human aspect as well, right? And I think online governance is really, really important from the beginning. And I see the future of that for tokenization, security tokens, as well as, utility tokens like DAOs, as well in terms of incentivization, because we want to move away from the big five companies that own everything, in terms of value distribution, to members, to stakers. So I'm really, really excited about that. And when I mentor founders, it's the same way, right? So I'm advised a few NFT projects. I think I'm like overly excited, about their projects. And I think it sounds really weird. For example, I advise a company that does data analytics, and I talk about that, right? I talk about that on Clubhouse. I have ideas about features that me as a user and a collector and an artist wanted to see. And I also, help design DAOs, and I customize it. It's not just, you do this, and that's it, right? Depending on the company, the design is different, and I have designed the architecture of the DAO, like from scratch. And I really love that. So in terms of my passion with founders, for example, I advise an AR, I mentor and advise an AR company. And I love augmented reality. Like last year, all I did was make AR filters and, have over 150 million impressions and 3 million users.
Wow.
So like for me, and that was just for fun, right? So when I advised, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I was like, can I make something? In your metaverse? Can I, you know what I mean? Like, so, as a person, I used to make 3D jewelry. And so I love 3D stuff, right? And a lot of AR is just really creating 3D assets. And so, I just, love it. And even with the VR, I basically have been learning about optics and computer vision for the last couple of years. And so when we talk about VR, even AR, it's really interesting because I advise another company that is something really cool that I can talk about right now. And, the other day I was helping them with just some filters. And since I've been kind of coding, those, it's kind of interesting and, awesome to kind of be able to provide input in that sense, more of the, technical and artistic input together.
Yeah, I hear you. And for some of these companies, Michelle, that you're working with that are bringing virtual assets into, and when I say virtual assets, I mean, like you're saying, those that, work in augmented reality environments, those that work in VR environments, and those that work in Ready Player One, which is kind of my opus for all of this, right? Where you're living in a total VR universe. And when you're working with founders on this, is there kind of some simple, fast, here's the top couple of things we think about when getting a product out to market the first time so that it does release into the market with authenticity, that it is well governed? Are there some easy tips and tricks there?
Yeah, so each one of these companies, I advise them differently. In different ways. Some of the companies are funded already, so they don't need fundraising. Other ones are just fundraising, and I help course review their deck and provide feedback on what their revenue model is, what their business model is, how are they going to launch, how they're going to get traction. A lot of time you need to really look at marketing and product at the same time, and a lot of founders don't because they're product people. And they don't know how to implement a plan to have traction. So I think that's really important to understand that. And I think the biggest competition regarding traction is time. The earlier that you start, the more people will know about it. You will have a community, because especially for a Web3 company, right? Because you need a community that drives value. And that creates that passion, for your project.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting a whole bunch of users behind you and support everything you do. That's a good position to be in.
I just want to add one more thing. And with that, when you think about governance and DAO, and if you are building a DAO, for a company, who is going to vote? Who is going to make the proposal? Right? So
Yeah,
you
exactly.
really need to build that community from day one.
Yeah, you need that constituency. Who's going to vote? You're exactly right. Just on that point specifically, when we talked last week as well, Michelle, you said that you thought NFTs will really open the door for DAOs, right?
Yeah.
And that you're doing some work in the state of Wyoming on DAOs. How's all that going?
I love it. I think NFTs, teach you how to use the MetaMask. It teaches you what Ethereum is and, what Solana is, what Tesla's is, what Polygon is, right? You have to be onboarded and you have to learn how to sell your Ethereum and, CoinMarketCap and all that. So I co-founded a nonprofit called the Dope Sea, and we're basically, it's a nonprofit, and we wanted to raise ocean awareness by do art and also NFTs. And we plan to create a DAO in Wyoming. I also mentor a company that helps people incorporate DAOs in Wyoming. So it starts with, I think the current DAO system are really hybrid traditional, right? So you have your founders, your execution team, and then you have the members who belong to the DAO. So you know that you have people who will execute, there's people who will lead, and then you have a couple of years to actually decentralize the whole system. I think one example is Blockstack. They basically file a Form A and they're recognized by the SEC. And then over time, now they don't have to file any reportings now because they're fully decentralized. So those could certainly happen. Or you can design a DAO to be decentralized from the beginning. And an attorney could always help you. So, besides working with the community, the people who are experts in DAOs, and the technical person who could implement it, right? Because you don't want your smart contract to be hacked. You also want to work with lawyers because you want to make sure that you do it properly, to make sure that there's decentralized aspect of it. And always, I always think ahead of time, right? So, even when I'm founding companies, I'm 6 months ahead, and this is now. And when you're creating a DAO, you wanted to think about that. And I think, that's an awesome question because you are doing that, right? So you now the DAO is this in 6 months, or 3 years, we want it to be like this. During the process of time, what needs to be changed and what is the roadmap for that? And, and roadmaps are never perfect, right? And especially when if you have like engineers and emergency tech teams and a bunch of bugs, but I think if you have a roadmap, if you miss the deadline, that you have to catch up. So, always try to be as OCD as possible regarding your roadmap and, just be on top of things.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was speaking to David Greider from Grayscale about this same idea, and he refers to a lot of this as an emerging market society in the cloud, right? And that we started with payments and, that's crypto. And now we're moving to some financial services, and that's DeFi. And now we're bringing into this emerging market society in the cloud. We're bringing some media, some art, some artifacts, right? With NFTs. So it's once you start thinking about things that way, having a JPEG of a rock makes a lot more sense, right? Where actually you might need that rock walking around a VR environment where you got to break a window to get into somebody's virtual house, right? You lost your keys. You got to get back into your house. Anyway, I digress. As you know, I'm leading the Launchpool Web3 Techstars Accelerator here in Dublin. Michelle, if you had one thing that you would absolutely look for as a leading indicator of a fantastic founder in the Web3 space, what would that be?
I think the number one thing I'm looking for, in a fantastic founder is whether they're humble or not. And that's important for me as a mentor and an advisor. But, also from my experience at PayPal, right? I've, negotiated transactions with a number of really well-known companies that are no longer here. And when negotiating with them, I always sensed a lot of pride, and there are, people, that say that, like the number one reason that you'll fail is because you don't listen and because you're really prideful. And so when working with founders, the people who wanted to learn who listens. They don't have to execute, your advice. You just want them to think about it and make a very informed decision after seeking, advice from different people and seeking mentorship. But if they're not humble, that it's kind of hard to work with them, and they may not succeed one day. And there's founders who kind of get away with that, but I kind of love founders who are humble and who are gritty, right? They don't give up and they just keep on going, and that's really, really important to succeed and to do well.
Yeah. I like for once to go not only through brick walls, but instead of trying to go through the brick wall, can they go over or under first, right? Save themselves some time. Right. That's one of the things that I look for. And when you are speaking with a founder, Michelle, and you like to look for that indication of, are they humble? Can they listen? Can you tell when they're not listening?
Yes, you can.
Give me.
Yeah. So you can kind of talk to the founder and learn about different characteristics about them, and and kind of choose whether you want to work with them or not, right? Sometimes it's hard to tell because a lot of founders are psychopathic, right? Because you sometimes you kind of have to be, but sometimes people are very conscious, and I think that's good, and sometimes it takes time to know a founder, so you in the crypto space, you see a lot of greed, you see a lot of fraud, you see a lot of con artists. They just want to raise money, but you also see people's philosophy and their passion in Web3. They have ethos. They wanted to really change society. They are well off already, but they wanted to create a project and they wanted to build, right? So I see a lot of that too. And and that's what kind of drives the ecosystem. And and a lot of founders, they are really secluded to themselves. When you really look at changing a whole ecosystem, I'm just not talking about, okay, I want your company to be successful. Sure, you could be, right? You can basically raise a lot of money and then you have your own company and just really excel there. But in order to change a whole ecosystem, like a whole Web3, you need to collaborate, right, across with different companies and with different founders. And I would love, to see a lot of that. And a lot of that has been happening. So you'll see the attitude and the way that people interact, with each other. I don't know, I was having dinner yesterday with a company that does analysis of the chain and compliance and KYC. And you'll see, when you're having dinner, you'll see each person and how they are, right? It's just really human interaction. There's a book called Games People Play, and I recommend that you get that book. It talks about behavior and transaction analysis, and from that you kind of know, how the founder is and how they relate to you and each other and to the waiters, whether they say thank you, after you speak with them, whether they give you, an agreement or incentivize you, all those things kind of say a lot about the founder.
I hear you. And when it was meeting with founders in an office, you could see how their body language worked toward their co-founders, right? You could see how they treated people and how they'd say hello to your team as you're walking an investor through to the conference room or walking a mentor through to the conference room to have a chat. With Zoom, it's a little bit harder to do that, obviously, but I can still see it, right? Where you pick out co-founders that might talk over each other versus co-founders that might finish each other's sentences. Right. There's a very slight distinction there to try to pick up on that. But you can also see on Zoom, you can see eyes rolling with one founder says something and the other founder disagrees. There's a couple of little tells there. But, so listen, we're absolutely looking forward to hopefully having you part of this program. And, we know that there's going to be so much that you're going to be able to bring to folks. So thank you for joining for the first part of this chat, Michelle, very much appreciated. I think what we're going to do now is open it up for questions from the crowd. I know we've got a bunch of people that have joined. Hugh, was there anything that initially jumped out that you think might be a good place for us to start?
Cool. Well, we've got a bunch of questions here, so I think it's just about going through them.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right.
Okay. Well, the one that got an upvote was, and Ignacio liked the question so much, he asked it twice. And I think I know who Ignacio is because I think he and I chatted yesterday. So hello, Ignacio. And he and I discussed this question yesterday. And how can you do a private token sale in the US from a regulation perspective? What kind of structure do you need and how do you avoid to be labeled as a security? And to answer the first part of the question, doing a private token sale in the US from a regulatory perspective is always done with a good lawyer by your side, right? So I've given the analogy of, and this is from some of the folks I've worked with in the US on token sales, that you're running blindfold along a cliff edge, not knowing exactly where that edge is. And that edge is the legal and reg side of things that could cause you to fall off the cliff. And because you are blindfolded, you know what? You're going to run a little bit more towards the hard ground rather than the cliff edge than you would normally do, just because it's really hard to see where things are going right now, especially in the US. Without filling this conversation full of caveats and disclaimers that this is not legal advice, obviously, Michelle, are there any perspectives that you can share there on US private token sales?
Not legal advice and or financial advice. So with the US, there's different categories, right? So there is utility tokens, there's security tokens, there's also stable coins. And so with utility tokens, the SEC has provided a framework about that. And they look at different factors. So it really depends on how you market, your TGE, token generation event, and a number of other items. However, most people do their utility tokens outside of the US. And most people basically do not seek US investment. And then there's also a security token. Security token is actually really not bad, but you don't have a lot of liquidity because there's not a lot of security exchanges yet. With secure tokenization, you basically have to file forms and you work with the attorney to do that. So I really don't think it's really that bad if you wanted to provide like even for your DAO like dividends and some kind of profit sharing. So it really depends on how you want to structure your project. And then, of course, there's stable coins, and we really don't know the fate of stable coins yet because the governments and the agencies are they're writing a paper on it as of now. And that's basically, I think I answered that question.
Yeah, you did. You did.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. No, and it is a very hot topic right now, and that I heard someone on a podcast the other day suggesting that why is the rest of the world gets to move at a certain direction on private token sales in the US is so restricted, but I mean, the US is a very unique market, and me being gone now from the US for 21 years, I look upon it a lot differently than I did 20 years ago in terms of how that's evolved from a regulatory perspective, or hasn't over the last period. One of the question there that I thought was interesting, with Web3 being more techie in nature, how can we lower the barrier of entry to make dApps easy to use for the regular user? Any of you there, Michelle?
Yeah, I think we still need to work on the UX, right? Because that is still very terrible. Like it's still hard to use Polygon on OpenSea to be onboarded. It's very difficult, and a lot of these websites. I'm just talking about the easy things like NFTs, right? Most of them aren't really working correctly. Like when you're used to using eBay, when you're using different platforms and Facebook and elsewhere, and then you basically have to click like 5 times to actually mint something, and you see your tokens on a MetaMask. Sometimes it's on the Ethereum mainnet, sometimes it's on the Ethereum mainnet. We need as a community to do a better job on figuring out how to solve the UX item, and we're gonna get there. Remember, we had AOL, we could hear the 7 layers, of TCP/IP and all that. We need to do the same thing, right, for Web3. And I think it's really up to the founders, like every one of you, who are inspired to, when you're building your app, to think about UX. How can we make it easier for folks to use? What could we change, on the UI? And do you have a UX person, on your team?
Oh yeah. So good question here that may be aligned with some of your background, Michelle. Do you think that unknown Web3 platforms will take over the Web2 giants such as Facebook?
Yes, that's one of my dreams, and I really believe that. The reason that we have Web3 and a lot of tokenization, a lot of incentivization are really important, because even a lot of the GameFi project, right, like Axie's Infinity, is that, when you're part of the DAO, you own a stake of the company, so value is redistributed to the user instead of owned by one central company. And that's going to be really important moving forward, that we are going to change the structure, not only of the financial system, because we no longer need the clearinghouse, right? And we don't need, foreign transaction fee, like what is that, right? You can send stablecoins. So we are going to change that. And, it is my dream that in my lifetime, I will see, a Web3 company taking over the Web2 giants. And I just really need to qualify this. And I want to make sure that whoever's listening, they understand that it's going to be taken over by founders who believe in the ethos of decentralization and what that is about, because I do not want to see Animal Farm, type kind of situation where, we replaced Facebook and we were worse than Facebook, right? Remember, blockchain is the largest tracking tool. It's also the awesomest technology that allows us to provide, trustless system that is, and accountability and credibility, right? So it could be bad or it could be good. And, as founders, and as participants in this ecosystem, you really want you to really think about it. And that always comes from the founders, so when you're building the next Facebook, do you have that ethos? Or are you building that for money and power, which we see a lot, right? Because there are a lot of logos that says we don't do evil, and that's taken down, and we need to understand human nature, right? So a lot of the blockchain governance has to take into human nature, so that evil cannot be done, by humans and our human nature. And that's really, really important, so that there is no Animal Farm.
I hear you. No, it's a very good point. Do you think that, I've been asking this question of everybody lately, Michelle, when you think about what crypto has accomplished over the last 11 years, pretty much, and do you see the world driving towards more crypto users than non-users of crypto? I think that tipping point will happen. Is that going to be done by individuals driving and just starting to transact and live and spend and buy and invest through digital assets? Or do you think that tipping point will only come if we bring some of that 250 trillion worth of wealth out there that is currently in fiat and bring that into this space? Do you think it's going to be one or the other, or a mix of the two?
I think
get to that tipping point.
I think it's going to be a mix of two. I think, what we see now is, Shibu became the number 11th biggest coin. Yeah. And it's really adorable. I really like that. And disclosure that I probably bought a little bit of it just for fun. And we see celebrities opening up to crypto and blockchain. And, even in the NFT space, right, 12-year-olds are creating art. I think they're making like millions, right, building that community. So also MasterCard, and I met the founder back yesterday night, and they're offering crypto into credit card, right? I think that's going to help with adoption. And, I think as the credit card companies, as merchants accept crypto, that's actually the startup's vision from before. And then as celebrities endorse it, and then the governments, when they regulate it, they also legitimize it. So we also have that going on, right? As they look into different issues, even if they give you a fine, you pay the fine, but they provide you with that legitimacy. I think all of those factors, and gaming, right? Gaming is going to really help you become an avatar. You earn NFTs. So it's gonna change. And I think one of the conversation that we had yesterday that was really interesting, and maybe Pete, I could ask you is, what do you think the price of Bitcoin would be, in our lifetime? And what do you think would drive that?
I don't know. I mean, 21 million is being held out as there's only 21 million ever to be mined, and there's that scarcity there. And I think something is worth what someone is willing to pay for it. I was thinking about this morning, actually, in that say there was some unexpected event that led to Bitcoin crashing down to $1 or less. There'd be plenty of people there buying at $1. Trust me, right? So I think less about the value of Bitcoin. I think it will continue to increase steadily over time. Whether that means 100,000 to 500,000. Again, this is not investment advice. Or $1 million. I don't know, but I think Bitcoin could go in so many different directions. It's really hard to put a value on. I think it's here to stay. I think it's here to stay, but I can't put it. I think less about value. I bought at stupid prices just because I believe in it as a long-term asset. Where my financial advisor would look at me like, why did you do that? I'm like, listen, I had an extra whatever, I'm going to put it in. And just because I believe in that long term. There's a podcaster, Peter McCormick, who is a Bitcoin maximalist, and he believes in Bitcoin and none other beyond that. Now, I wouldn't go that far, okay, because this is a multi-chain world, absolutely. But I wish I could put a price on it for you, Michelle, but I'm lost for words in that debate.
Yeah, we mentioned, and this is not financial advice. We mentioned, I think, 500,000, $1 million, and we talk about the utility of Bitcoin, having the digital and also the linking to a physical, right? Because you go there, you could buy a Tesla, for example. You have the digital and you have the physical item. And then we basically talk about, Ethereum, right? So it's just really interesting, and that was a really interesting discussion, and with a number of professionals in the space. I really, really enjoyed that discussion. But, maybe it's something that founders think about, like the project that you're making. What in your lifetime, what is the value of the token that you're providing, and how do you get there? And what is the tipping point that would bring you there, right? And a few of us, including me, one is celebrity endorsement, right? There's factors such as utility, and then there's government endorsement, like CBDC, government-backed stablecoins. Those would be some of the things that would impact your attraction and the value that it brings to your project. So kind of think about those things.
I will, and it might be an interesting debate to throw into our Launchpool Web3 Techstars Accelerator here in Dublin on the price of Bitcoin. And just take a couple hours with that and see what ideas people come up with and where it could all go. And maybe we could throw that together into a podcast discussion. Who knows? But listen, all right. So Michelle, again, thank you so much. Any closing 3-4 short words for all of our friends out here in the Web3 space before you descend into Money 2020?
Yes, keep on building. And don't give up.
Exactly. Wonderful. Perfect words to end it. Michelle, thank you so much. Hugh, thank you so much for helping us out with this. You're a rock star. Appreciate it. And Michelle, enjoy Money 2020, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks, everyone.
That does it for this week, folks. A big thanks to Michelle for opening up her mind to help us figure out why she does what she does. Links to learn more about Michelle are in the show notes on our website at moneyneversleeps.ie, so check us out online. If you like what you heard, we would sincerely appreciate a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or whatever platform you're listening on, as it helps others to find the show. And remember, Money Never Sleeps is spelled as all one word. Thanks to Conan Brophy from Create Sound for mixing and editing this episode. Conan is an excellent media man to get in touch with when you're thinking about launching your own podcast. As for me, I'm an early-stage startup advisor and investor, and I'm leading the Launchpool Web3 Techstars Accelerator here in Dublin, Ireland. As always, I help fintech and digital asset startups get their product to market, build traction with customers, and raise funding. If you'd like to get in touch, drop us a line on info@moneyneversleeps.ie. Finally, till next time, thanks for listening. See ya!